Subscribe because it's free.
The High Chancellor of the Galactic Concordat stood before a sea of alien delegates, his voice laced with absolute certainty. "It has been 5 centuries since the last human fell," he declared. "The era of chaos is over. The galaxy is finally at peace." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the Grand Chamber. The Vortani, cold and calculating, nodded in approval. The Kresh Dominion, towering warlords clad in ceremonial armor, scoffed at the mere mention of humans. They were reckless, undisciplined. A Kresh general sneered. They warred like animals, spread like a plague. They were doomed to fall. The Elterans, a species of biomechanical intellects, calculated the probability of human survival. The result was always the same: 0. They had seen the last of them wiped out, chased to the edges of the cosmos. No species could endure beyond the known void. And yet, something was wrong. Faint signals, distorted and ancient, had begun bleeding into galactic channels, patterns eerily reminiscent of human transmissions. Concordat scouts reported anomalies. Wreckage fields that should have been barren now showed signs of movement. Deep space monitoring stations went silent, leaving behind only corrupted distress calls. The High Chancellor dismissed these concerns as paranoia, drifting signals, ghost echoes of a dead species. He turned to the Kresh warlords. "Send a fleet to Ragnar's Rift. End these foolish rumors." A Kresh fleet of 30 warships jumped into the dead system, weapons primed. The Rift was a battlefield frozen in time, the grave of humanity's last stand. Wreckage stretched across light years, derelict ships drifting in eternal silence. Yet, something stirred. A lone vessel, impossibly intact, loomed in the darkness. The ISS Revenant, a dreadnought-class warship from humanity's final war, its hull scarred whole. It should have been dead like the rest of its kind, but its engines thrummed, its weapons online. The Kresh commander barked an order. "Scan it, now!" The moment their sensors locked on, the ship moved. No propulsion, no warning, just instant motion, appearing behind the Kresh fleet. Before they could react, a beam of white-hot energy lands through the flagship, slicing it in half. Explosions bloomed across the formation. Frantic orders screamed through the comms. The fleet retaliated, firing everything they had. But the Revenant flickered, its form shifting, phasing between reality and something else. Their shots passed through empty space. One by one, Kresh warships vanished, not destroyed, but erased from existence. The last remaining battleship broadcast a final, chilling transmission. "They're back. Gods help us all." The message spread like wildfire. Fear gripped the Concordat. No empire, no species had ever returned from extinction. The impossible had happened. Humanity had returned. The High Chancellor watched the last transmission from the Kresh fleet in stunned silence. 30 warships erased in minutes. The chamber of the Galactic Concordat erupted in panic. The Vortani, usually composed, hissed in fear. The Elterans frantically ran probability calculations, their glowing neural interfaces flickering wildly. The Kresh, once proud, stood motionless. A voice broke through the chaos. "This is impossible." But it wasn't. The question no one dared ask had to be answered. Where had humanity gone? 5 centuries ago, the war against them had been swift, brutal, decisive. They had fought harder than any species before. But the overwhelming numbers of the Concordat had pushed them back. In desperation, the last human fleets had made a final jump, disappearing beyond known space into the dark expanse. It was assumed they had perished. No life could exist in that endless void. No stars, no planets, just a crushing abyss. But humanity hadn't died. They had adapted. The dark expanse had been more than empty space. It had been something else, something ancient, something alien. What they had found out there had changed them. Their technology advanced beyond recognition, beyond understanding. They had returned as something greater. Terran warships, long thought to be crude and inefficient, now moved without propulsion, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons no longer relied on conventional energy. They struck with absolute force, bending the very fabric of space. The first true battle erupted when the Concordat sent an emergency fleet to Varan 6, a fortress world protected by orbital defenses and enough firepower to level a planet. Nothing could breach it. Nothing had for centuries. And then the Terrans arrived. The assault began with silence. No warnings. No distress signals. The stars around the planet seemed to shift, then darken. The first ship phased into orbit, an Abyss-class warship the size of a small moon. Its hull was unlike anything seen before, pulsing with black veins of shifting metal. Its form never quite still. The Concordat's forces fired everything. Missiles, plasma, antimatter rounds. It didn't matter. The warship absorbed the attacks as if they never existed. Then, without a single visible weapon, it unmade the first defense platform. Not destroyed. Not vaporized. Just gone. Panic spread to Concordat forces as Terran ships blinked into existence within their formations, bypassing shields, ignoring all conventional laws of warfare. Entire squadrons vanished before they could fire a shot. Some tried to flee, only to find their ships trapped in place, their engines refusing to obey, and then the drop pods fell. Not pods, spheres of shifting metal that liquefied upon impact. From them emerged humans, or what remained of them, taller, stronger, eyes burning with unnatural light. Their armor moved like living shadows, weapons defying explanation. The battle lasted 13 minutes. The most fortified world in the Concordat fell without a single human casualty. Then the message came. You thought we were gone. We have returned. The galaxy had always feared humanity's ambition. They had never considered what would happen if they returned with vengeance. Panic gripped the galaxy. The fall of Varan 6 sent shockwaves through every major power. No species had ever returned from extinction. No fleet had ever fought like this. Phasing in and out of reality, ignoring physics, erasing entire armies. The Concordat's greatest minds scrambled for an explanation, but there was none. This was no rebellion, no resurgence of a lost empire. This was an execution. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The High Chancellor's voice trembled as he addressed the room. We must unite. Every species, every fleet. If we do not stop them now, we never will. For the first time in galactic history, old enemies put aside their hatred. The Vortani, the Kresh Dominion, the Eltrons, every major power joined forces. They amassed the largest fleet ever assembled, 10,000 warships. Every weapon, every defense, every mind focused on one purpose, stopping the return of humanity. They would make their stand at Seraphis Prime, the heart of the Concordat's power. Heavily fortified, shielded by planetary cannons and orbital fleets, it was a world designed to withstand anything but this. The first sign of attack was a blackening of the stars. Not ships, not visible movement, just an absence, an emptiness where the void itself seemed to writhe. Then the Terran fleet arrived, not through hyperspace, not through wormholes. They simply appeared inside the Concordat's formations, warping into existence in perfect, calculated precision. The battle began in a storm of fire. The Concordat's weapons lashed out with unimaginable force, lighting up the void. For the first time, the humans took damage. Some ships flickered, shields failing for a moment before recalibrating. The Council dared to hope. And then the Nemesis arrived, the largest human warship ever seen. It was not a ship. It was an abyss, a structure so massive it blocked the light of Seraphis Prime itself. Its surface constantly shifted, breaking the minds of those who stared too long. It did not fire weapons. It did not need to. One by one, Concordat warships froze in space. Systems locked. AI overrides failed. Entire squadrons ceased to exist in the blink of an eye. Panic set in. Some tried to flee. The humans let them for a moment, then space itself folded, and they were right back where they started, helpless as the warship's influence expanded. The ground invasion came next. Terran drop forces moved as one, their armor shifting like liquid shadows. Kresh warriors, once the most feared in the galaxy, were cut down before they could react. Vortani strategists, masters of war, found their tactics predicted, and countered before they were even deployed. And then the final horror came. They surrendered. The great armies of the Concordat, the strongest the galaxy had ever known, laid down their weapons in terror. But humanity did not stop. A single message was broadcast across every channel. Your time is over. And the killing began. The galaxy burned. Seraphis Prime, the unbreakable heart of the Concordat, had fallen in a single day. The largest fleet ever assembled lay in ruin, not defeated, but erased. The streets of the capital city, once bustling with life, were silent except for the steady march of Terran forces. There were no negotiations, no demands, no mercy. The High Chancellor sat alone in the ruins of the Great Hall, staring at the massive breach where the walls had once stood. He could still hear the echoes of screams, the thunder of impossible weapons. The humans had changed. These were no longer the reckless, emotional warriors of the past. They were something more, something inhuman. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow, deliberate, not the clanking of crushed boots, nor the whispering glide of Eltran forms. These steps were heavy, controlled. Human, a lone figure stepped into the light. At first glance, it looked like the humans of old, but its armor moved, shifting in ways the Chancellor's mind couldn't fully process. Its eyes, glowed with an unnatural light, regarded him with something worse than hatred. Indifference. The Chancellor's voice trembled. "Why?" The figure tilted its head. "Why?" It repeated as if tasting the word. Then it crouched, staring into the Chancellor's weary eyes. "You thought we would die," it said. "You thought forcing us into the abyss would break us. But you never considered what the abyss would do to us." The Chancellor shuddered. The humans had vanished for 5 centuries, left to rot in a lifeless void. But instead of dying, they had become part of it. The void had changed them, shaped them, turned them into something the galaxy was never meant to face. "You speak of peace," the figure continued, "but your peace was built on our graves." The Chancellor's breath hitched as the human leaned closer. "Now we build our future on yours." A sound split the silence, the deafening, echoing voice of 1,000 overlapping whispers. The others had arrived. More humans, stepping through the ruins like specters, their eyes burning like dying stars. The Chancellor knew, in that moment, that it was over, not just for him, for everyone. Across the stars, planet after planet fell. The Concordat collapsed in days. Species that had once ruled the galaxy vanished. The Kresh homeworld, glass. The Vertani citadels, silent. The Eltran mines, absorbed into something far worse than death. Some tried to run. There was nowhere left to go. The final message from the last Concordat outpost was short. They are not human anymore. But they were. And the galaxy would never forget what they had done.